Welcome. I'm Krista Baptista, Global Director of DAI Center for Digital Acceleration. DAI is thrilled to be a sponsor for this year's ICT for D conference, especially given its focus on partnerships. Partnerships, including with country partners, are going to be a critical way to tackle the development challenges of this pandemic era. COVID-19 has changed the way we work and forced business, government, and society as a whole to adopt digital technology more rapidly than ever before, and more rapidly than the digital development community might have expected. This process of digital transformation consists of things like businesses moving products and services online, governments using digital technology to provide services, manage operations, and engage citizens, and labor markets becoming more digitally connected. However, this rapid transformation is happening in the context of pre-COVID structural challenges. The first of these is the digital divide. As many of us read from the World Bank, and the World Bank warned us 5 years ago, the promise of digital dividends is likely to be undercut by the digital divide, which further excludes socio-economically disadvantaged groups. Just one example is the usage gap between men and women. That's estimated to be an average of around 20 to 25%, and as high as 137% in South Asia and 43% in Sub-Saharan Africa. The second challenge is the technology skills gap. Around the world, we've already seen how the engine of technology talent is unable to feed the levels of demand, even in pre-COVID times. This demand for skills has only grown during this rapid digital transformation process, and it threatens the quality and the quantity of skilled labor available for governments, private sector, and civil society organizations as they transition to digital solutions. And the third challenge is around the digital trust deficit. Despite the rapid pace of technology access and usage around the world, we must contend with the growing lack of trust in both traditional institutions like government and the media, as well as in technology firms and their platforms. For example, the 2020 Edelman Trust Barometer found that while overall levels of trust in the tech sector are high relative to other sectors, technology companies suffered their sharpest loss in trust in 2020. And the 2019 version of the study found that trust in social media, which is the face of digital transformation that is widely prevalent among developing countries, was much lower than in the wider tech sector. Addressing these structural challenges isn't easy, and it cannot be done through one type of actor. That's why events like this one are so essential. It will require partnerships across multiple actors: government, private sector, donors, civil society organizations, NGOs, academia, and others to develop approaches that address these challenges. Partnerships such as those between big tech companies and local content creators to bridge the digital literacy divide in emerging markets. Partnerships, for example, between private companies working in the education space, pushing for serious education reform to transform curriculum at the pace of industry demands, and thus create a workforce that's ready to tackle the digital issues of today and the next decade. In the spirit of partnerships, it only makes sense to include two of DAI's partners in this session. With me today to discuss the role of partnerships in addressing these challenges is Hamilton McNutt, Vice President and COO of Strategic Impact Advisors, and Savita Bailar, Research Director at Caribou Digital. Welcome, Hamilton and Savita. I'm so glad that you can join me here for this session. I'd like to start off with a question for you, Savita. How have partnerships been critical in addressing these challenges in your work?
Hi, Krista. Thank you so much for inviting me, and hi to everyone. I'm really looking forward to the theme of this conference on partnerships because I think it's so critical right now, as Krista said. So I'd like to start with three themes that are global around partnerships, and then three things that we've learned specifically at Caribou. So the three global themes to follow on from Krista. So first, I think we experienced the digital divide on a very personal basis, and developed countries particularly experienced this, and the question of the digital divide began to surface as mainstream. There were even articles in the New York Times around how children were experiencing access issues to online school, and middle classes around the world began to experience a little of what's so so-called underserved demographics might face. Then secondly, we also saw the pandemic was giving the private sector opportunities to implement policies for lower income demographics. So for example, M-Pesa in Kenya removed fees for all P2P transactions for less than 1,000 Kenyan shillings, about $10. And then finally, following on from what Krista mentioned around building trust, as researchers and practitioners in the community, we saw a greater need for trust in the way the ICTD or the digital development community works. Having to work remotely requires greater trust from all of us, as we're experiencing. So then 3 things that we've learned specifically at Caribou. First, we've seen throughout the pandemic that MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises need digital skills and tools to build resilience and growth potential through the pandemic. At Caribou, we're working with the Strive community in partnership with MasterCard. And this is to provide skills and training in digital tools for partners in small and medium enterprise, micro, small, and medium enterprises. So specifically with Arifu in Kenya and digitization training in Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam with Grab Academy. And then secondly, on partnering locally, from the beginning, Caribou has been intentional in going beyond working with subcontractors to valued partners. But in a little bit, I'd like to talk about how we've done that in developing a code of conduct. And thirdly, around data partnerships, I'd like to mention Caribou Data, an app developed by colleagues, which is privacy guaranteed, so no granular data is shared. And users who agree to download the app are compensated with airtime in return for their usage patterns to be understood and analyzed. And Caribou has conducted projects with multiple partners, including Safaricom in Kenya and Vodafone in Ghana, to understand these data patterns. And one thing we've learned, for example, that it's important to understand behavioral context to design better products. So, unifying payments and messaging, for example, to understand how the transactions are carried out in a user's life. So these are just some of the things that we've learned given the pandemic and our experiences in research through the pandemic.
Thanks, Savita. So many good examples there of thinking through the different dynamics of partnerships. And Hamilton, I want to ask you the same question. How have partnerships been critical in addressing these challenges in your work?
Thanks, Krista. And again, it's great to be here. And I echo your and Savita's comments earlier on the importance of the theme of partnerships and digital development. So thanks again for inviting me. Yeah, I would like to quickly share some insights on partnerships from our work, building an open source library of audio-based digital financial literacy content that was really focused on building confidence and trust and skills for women in the use of digital financial services, particularly mobile money in this context. So with funding from USAID's GenDev team, and support from USAID's digital finance team, we launched the Hey Sister, Show Me the Mobile Money series in 2020. Our goal was really to provide an open resource that was applicable across a variety of markets in Africa that would help address the digital financial literacy gap that exists there, which also helps close the digital divide, build trust, and develop skills. So the dramatized scripts and audio recordings are in 15 languages, including French, English, Swahili, Kenya, Rwanda, and many local languages in our 3 target markets, which were Ghana, Malawi, and Uganda. And we are currently actually developing a Spanish version that is more context specific for Latin America. Partnerships were really key for this project. We used IVR through Viamo as one channel to deliver the lessons in our 3 target markets, but we also partnered with a wide range of around 15 different local grassroots organizations and larger NGOs to hold facilitated learning sessions with the audio content as part of those facilitated learning sessions. And these partners saw mutual benefit in these resources and the content, and many of them adopted it without really any grant funding. So organizations like One Acre Fund are using these materials now in Kenya and Rwanda. We also closely worked with MTN Ghana and who they saw value in the resources as well, even though it wasn't a direct marketing play for them. And MTN Ghana launched the Hey Sister materials on their IVR platform free of charge in Ghana and to their customers without us having to pay them for anything. So far, our count sort of across the markets that we're in has Hey Sister reaching 229,000 individuals, with 170,000 of those being women. And these partnerships and this content have been have had some impact addressing some of those structural challenges you mentioned, Krista, at the start of this. So for trust and skills, we observed how confident women felt using mobile money services, and we saw approximately a 12% point increase in women who reported feeling confident using mobile money after listening to Hey Sister. And then also, in terms of an additional one for helping improve trust and skills, we saw a 26% point reduction in PIN sharing amongst women participants in groups. So again, just a little bit more confidence and understanding of the security measures and things that they should and shouldn't be doing around the use of mobile money. We also saw, some differences in reaction to scams, because scamming did have a quick uptick, particularly as the pandemic rolled out. So we saw that 37% of listeners of Hey Sister reported taking new actions when they encountered something suspicious, a suspicious message or something like that. So we saw some interesting impact on some of these structural challenges that you were mentioning, Krista. So thank you very much, Linda.
Thanks, Hamilton. That's a great example, and really appreciate the results, and also this idea of really spontaneous reuse, or partners taking up content and lessons that you've produced through your program and applying those to their own platforms. That's really exciting, and I think those types of successes will go a long way in solving some of these challenges. We have had some unique partnerships at DAI as well at the country level. For example, we're working with USAID and Microsoft on their an airband initiative that aims to bring meaningful access to women using digital tools that advance women's economic opportunities and create more self-reliant communities. Microsoft Airband partners span local internet service providers in 5 countries. So we're working in Guatemala, India, Ghana, Kenya, and Colombia. And the aim is to expand the user base of women in rural communities through providing digital literacy training, custom service offerings and marketing efforts, and programming that addresses social norms and women's technology use. So really hitting on the digital divide and trust issues. In addition, we've been doing some research in 2021 in Nigeria on looking at the process for engaging around national level digital policies and regulations, and looking for ways to really engage across different partners, government, civil society, and private industry to work together on the design and rollout of policies so that citizens are meaningfully integrated into digital policy development process. And lastly, we're really excited. We're going to be launching at this conference a paper on the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. And we're going to lay out how partnerships between global North and South can help us get ahead of issues around artificial intelligence bias and other implementation challenges. So from there, Hamilton, I have a follow-up question for you. Given the importance of working across the ecosystem with different types of actors, including the private sector, as you mentioned, how do you strike the balance between social responsibility and the commercial needs of companies?
Thanks, Krista. So as I mentioned, we had this great partnership with MTN Ghana going on, and I think there's some key elements there because the materials weren't necessarily marketing materials for their mobile money platform. It was sort of a broader education curriculum. So there were a few things that I wanted to just tips in terms of engagement that helped that partnership form. So the first one was, we did need to show them that there was uptake numbers and that people were listening to the content to show that the content had value. So we had that benefit, that advantage, because we'd already had the content up via Viamo for almost a year. So we had that advantage. Also, we have really strong relationships with MTN in Ghana, so the pre-existing relationships were important. And then ensuring that sort of everything was very easy for the MTN team. So, we made sure that all the decision tree functionalities within the IVR are very sort of close to what they're used to seeing. Everything we sort of customized to their templates, etc. So that was another piece. And we also helped with quality assurance testing to make sure the messages sounded great. And basically did a lot, helped them with sort of getting the content up as well. And then also finally, we just did a lot of collaboration on marketing efforts as well. So I think there's, those are some key insights into what we, how we sort of established this partnership with MTN, and striking that balance. I think they felt there was value in the content because they saw that the uptake numbers and saw that the content was specific to and talking to mobile money, not necessarily MTN's mobile money product, but the general mobile money product. So,
yeah, great. Thanks, Hamilton. One reflection, I think it's clear that there needs to be incentive structures to get partners on the same page. And we need more evidence on which incentives are better motivators for the different types of partners that we'll want to work with. There might be different incentives for private companies versus government actors versus other partners on programs. Savita, I have a question for you, given the research you do in this space. What research gaps do you think are most important to focus on?
Yeah, thanks, Krista. I think it's interesting that research is getting more prominence recently, which is fantastic. There are two things I'd like to focus on. One is that we are beginning to move towards more remote research, necessitated by the pandemic, but I think this is becoming more normal. And the first thing that involves is expectations around what that research constitutes. So we've developed a code of conduct at Caribou, which we work through with partners before the start of every project. So this was something we developed internally around what are expectations of how partners would work, and then partners of partners. And it's definitely made a huge improvement in terms of expectations. And we've also incorporated it into our M&E of how we evaluate our research projects. Second, I think increasingly we are seeing more work on products and researching product use, so more of an emphasis on UX and UI. And there is a history of participatory research and participation in development, if you think back to the work of Robert Chambers from the 1980s. And I think this is a good thing because we get more into the nitty-gritty of products. I'm sure Hamilton has seen that in their work. But there's also a concern that too much focus on just products might disregard the broader social context. And we need to land somewhere in the middle in our work in digital development, between too much of a product focus, not looking at the product enough, and too much of the M&E focus on did a project go off well or not. So somewhere in the middle is a good thing. And there's a great paper by Thomas Both going beyond a simple product focus to looking at systems focused user research, which I think is worth all of us working research bearing in mind.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that actually, just really briefly. So, we've been doing some work with a client on sort of reviewing research that's out there. A lot of it older research as well from 2010, 11, 12. And I think for us, a lot of the gaps that we really see, or like the trends that we're seeing, is a lot of the research that we find, while like there are some famous RCT and other sort of research methodology trials out there, a lot of it is based on sort of expert conversations that are a bit more subjective in terms of evidence, right? So you have some famous real hard evidence that mobile money, for example, has had an impact, a positive impact on income. The Surrey Jack research in Kenya, everybody knows about. And I know that there are sort of people continually adding to that evidence gap, but the digital transformation industry sort of in general oftentimes will make these anecdotal statements like, increasing someone's digital footprint will increase the services accessible to them, but there's not necessarily, hard evidence to back that up yet, right? It's a bit more complicated than that. So I think it's important that, moving forward, people are a little bit more careful in some of the statements that they make, and that the evidence and the way that the industry thinks about creating evidence is a bit more better aligned and better coordinated.
Great, thanks Hamilton, thanks Savita. I want to thank you both for joining me to kick off this conference. Over the next 3 days, you're going to hear more about why partnerships are so critical to addressing these major challenges in digital development and in other parts of our work. And we'll talk about how to make the right technology choices through collaboration, the importance of partnering locally, and about data sharing in partnerships. I challenge everyone to engage and build partnerships with the many amazing speakers and participants we have at the conference so that we can continue to tackle these challenges together. And I look forward to following up with many of you during the course of this event and beyond.